Well, the biggest issue I see with so-called AI experts is that they think they know more than they do. And they think they're smarter than they actually are. In general, we are all much smarter than we think we are, but much less smart, dumber than we think we are, by a lot. So this tends to plague smart people. They just can't. They define themselves by their intelligence, and they don't like the idea that a machine could be way smarter than them. So they discount the idea, which is fundamentally flawed. That's the wishful thinking situation. I'm really quite close to. I'm very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows, and the rate of improvement is exponential. You can see this in things like AlphaGo, which went from, in the span of maybe 6 to 9 months, it went from being unable to beat even a reasonably good Go player to then beating the European world champion, who was ranked 600, then beating Lisa Doll 4-5, who had been world champion for many years, then beating the current world champion, then beating everyone while playing simultaneously. Then there was AlphaZero, which crushed AlphaGo 100-0. And AlphaZero just learned by playing itself, and it can play basically any game that you put the rules in for. Whatever rules you give it, it literally read the rules, play the game, and be superhuman for any game. Nobody expected that rate of improvement. If you ask those same experts who think AI is not progressing at the rate that I'm saying, I think you will find that their predictions for things like Go and other AI advancements have their batting average is quite weak. It's not good. We'll see this also with self-driving. I think probably by end of next year, self-driving will encompass essentially all modes of driving and be at least 100 to 200% safer than a person by the end of next year. We're talking like maybe 18 months from now. NHTSA did a study on Tesla's Autopilot version 1, which is relatively primitive, and found that it was a 45% reduction in highway accidents. And that's despite Autopilot 1 being just version 1. Version 2, I think, will be at least 2 or 3 times better. That's the current version that's running right now. So the rate of improvement is really dramatic. We have to figure out some way to ensure that the advent of digital superintelligence is one which is symbiotic with humanity. I think that's the single biggest existential crisis that we face, and the most pressing one. I'm not normally an advocate of regulation and oversight. I mean, I think one should generally err on the side of minimizing those things. But this is a case where you have a very serious danger to the public. And so therefore there needs to be a public body that has insight and then oversight to confirm that everyone is developing AI safely. This is extremely important. I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. That would be insane. And mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. Far. So why do we have no regulatory oversight? I'm not really all that worried about the short-term stuff. Things that are... like narrow AI is not a species-level risk. It will result in dislocation, in lost jobs, and sort of better weaponry and that kind of thing. But it is not a fundamental species-level risk, whereas digital superintelligence is. So it's really all about laying the groundwork to make sure that if humanity collectively decides that creating digital superintelligence is the right move, then we should do so very, very carefully. Very, very carefully. This is the most important thing that we could possibly do. and that AI risk is that I guess there's sort of a benign AI, and that we're able to achieve a symbiosis with that AI. Ideally, the AI. There's somebody who I can't remember his name, but had a good suggestion for what the optimization of the AI should be. What's its utility function? You have to be careful about this, because if you say maximize happiness, and the AI concludes that happiness is a function of dopamine and serotonin, so it captures all humans and jacks your brain with large amounts of dopamine and serotonin. Like, okay, it's not what we meant.
It sounds pretty good, though.
Oh, you'll love it. Well, I like the definition of, like, the AI should try to maximize the freedom of action of humanity. Maximize the freedom of action. Maximize freedom, essentially. I like that definition. But we do want a close coupling between collective human intelligence and digital intelligence. And Neuralink is trying to help in that regard by creating an interface between a high bandwidth interface between AI and human brain.
It's going to be very tempting to use AI as a weapon. It's going to be very tempting. In fact, it will be used as a weapon. So the on-ramp to serious AI, the danger is going to be more humans using it against each other, I think, most likely. That'll be the danger. Yeah. I find as I get older, I find that question to be maybe more and more confusing or troubling or uncertain. I think particularly when you see the advancement of something like video games, you know, like say 40 years ago, you had video games. The most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like two rectangles and a dot. You're like batting it back and forth.
I played it.
Oh yeah, like me too, exactly. I
That's
played Pong. Exactly. It sort of dates you a little bit, but yeah, we both played the same game, and that was like, wow, that was a pretty fun game at the time. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic, and millions of people playing simultaneously, and you see where things are going with virtual reality and augmented reality, and if you extrapolate that out into the future with any rate of progress at all, like even 0.1% or something like that a year, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. And then it seems like, well, how do we know that that didn't happen in the past? And that we're not in one of those games ourselves? Well, I've been trying to think of, like, you know, what is an actual good future? What does that actually look like? Or at least bad, or I don't know how you want to characterize it. Because to a point that was made earlier, I think maybe by Sam and maybe by others, that we're headed towards either superintelligence or civilization ending. Those like the two things that are like that'll happen. Intelligence will keep advancing. The only thing that would prevent it from advancing is something that puts civilization into stasis or destroys civilization. So then we have to figure out what is a world that we would like to be in, where there is this digital superintelligence. I think and then another point that I think is really important to appreciate is that all of us already are cyborgs. So you have a machine extension of yourself in the form of your phone and your computer and all your applications. You are already superhuman. But by far, you have more power, more capability than the President of the United States had 30 years ago. If you have an internet link, you have an oracle of wisdom. You can communicate to millions of people. You can communicate to the rest of Earth instantly. I mean, these are magical powers that didn't exist not that long ago. So everyone is already superhuman and a cyborg. The limitation is one of bandwidth. So we're bandwidth constrained, particularly on output. Our input is much better, but our output is extremely slow. If you want to be generous, you could say maybe it's a few hundred bits per second or a kilobit or something like that output. The way we output is like we have our little meat sticks that we move very slowly and push buttons or tap a little screen. And that's just extremely slow. Compare that to a computer which can communicate at the terabit level. There's a very big orders of magnitude differences. Our input is much better because of vision, but even that could be enhanced significantly. So I think that the two things that are needed for a future that we would look at and conclude is good, most likely, is we have to solve that bandwidth constraint with a direct neural interface. I think a high bandwidth interface to the cortex, so that we can have a digital tertiary layer that's more fully symbiotic with the rest of us. Like we've got the cortex and the limbic system, which seem to work together pretty well. They've got good bandwidth, whereas the bandwidth to our digital tertiary layer is weak. So I think if we can solve that bandwidth issue, and then AI can be widely available. So AI, the analogy to nuclear bombing is not exactly correct. It's not as though it's going to explode and create a mushroom cloud. It's more like if there were just a few people that had it, they would be able to be essentially dictators of Earth, or whoever acquired it, and if it was limited to a small number of people, and it was ultra smart, they would have dominion over Earth. So I think it's extremely important that it be widespread, and that we solve the bandwidth issue. And if we do those things, then it will be tied to our consciousness, tied to our will, tied to the sum of individual human will, and everyone would have it. So it would be sort of still a relatively even playing field. In fact, it would be probably more egalitarian than today. I have thought about this a lot, and I think it just really comes down to two things, and it's the solving the machine brain bandwidth constraint and democratization of AI. I think if we have those two things, the future will be good. There's a great quote by Lord Acton, which is that freedom consists of the distribution of power and despotism in its concentration. And I think as long as AI power is, like, anyone can get it if they want it, and we've got something faster than meat sticks to communicate with, then I think the future will be good.